One calm morning, a hobby drone pilot set out to observe a herd of bison. What seemed like a routine flight quickly transformed into a remarkable wildlife discovery. The footage revealed something so extraordinary that no one would have believed it without the drone's recording. Ethan loved flying his drone early in the morning to film the beautiful bison that lived near Crystal Lake. He'd been doing this for years, capturing amazing footage of these massive animals' daily lives. The routine had started as a way to cope with loss. After his wife Ava passed away 3 years ago, Ethan found solace in these quiet morning flights, watching life continue its steady march through his drone's camera lens. Ava had been the one who first suggested he'd take up drone photography, knowing his lifelong passion for wildlife. "You've got an eye for it," she'd told him, and as always, she'd been right. Even before Eva's passing, they'd spent countless weekends at the lake, sharing a thermos of coffee as the sun rose over the mountains. Eva would sketch the bison in her weathered notebook, while Ethan experimented with different camera angles. Her artwork now decorated the walls of his small cabin, a beautiful reminder of their shared love for this special place. On this specific spring morning, an unusual event was unfolding. The atmosphere felt distinct, infused with a tense energy, much like the moments preceding a thunderstorm. As Ethan guided his drone over the familiar meadow, he noticed right away that the bison were acting strange. Instead of spreading out across the field like they normally did, they had formed a perfect circle, something he'd never seen before in all his years of filming. "That's weird," Ethan muttered to himself, adjusting his drone's controls to get a better view. He knew bison sometimes made circles when they needed to protect their babies from wolves or bears, but this was totally different. At least 50 of them must have been facing inward, staring at something in the middle of their circle that Ethan couldn't quite see from his current position. Some of the bison stood near the water's edge, their massive forms reflected in the still surface of Crystal Lake. Others were positioned further inland, their dark shapes standing out against the vibrant green grass. But none of them were eating or drinking. They just stood there, completely still, like guards protecting something important. Meanwhile, in her small cabin on the other side of the lake, Park Ranger Mila was already awake, reviewing reports of unusual seismic activity in the area. For the past week, her instruments had been picking up strange vibrations. Nothing dangerous, but certainly not normal. The patterns were unlike anything she'd seen in her 20 years as a ranger, resembling more the rhythmic pulses of a heartbeat than typical geological activity. Mila had intended to investigate, but the demands of the spring tourist season and training a new ranger, Tim Rodriguez, had kept her occupied. Something in the park was undergoing a transformation, but she couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Tim, fresh out of ranger school and eager to prove himself, had been bothering her about the readings. "We should check it out," he'd said yesterday, his dark eyes bright with enthusiasm. "What if it's related to the old mining tunnels under the North Ridge?" His indigenous heritage gave him a different perspective on the park's mysteries, one that combined modern scientific knowledge with generations of traditional wisdom. Mila had promised they'd look into it today, but fate had other plans. When Ethan's call came through, she was just finishing her second cup of coffee, trying to make sense of the latest seismic readings. They regularly talked on the phone, and when they met each other on their respective walks, so it wasn't unusual, but the urgency in his voice immediately caught her attention. "Mila, you need to take a look at this," he said, his voice quivering with excitement. "I captured something truly extraordinary on my drone camera. The bison are behaving in a way I've never witnessed before." Mila had seen all sorts of strange things during her 15 years at the park. Bears opening car doors, even a mountain lion that seemed to understand basic commands. But she wasn't prepared for what Ethan's drone footage showed her. "Keep filming," she instructed. "I'm heading out there right now. And Ethan, don't let your drone lose sight of those bison, no matter what happens." She quickly radioed Tim. "Change of plans, rookie. Meet me at the East Meadow and bring the geophysical equipment, all of it." As she grabbed her gear, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to witness something unprecedented. As Ethan moved his drone closer to get a better view, something even more extraordinary happened. The bison, which usually scattered when the drone got too close, didn't move an inch. These weren't just any bison. This was the Crystal Lake herd, known for their unusual intelligence and strong family bonds. They maintained their circular formation, shoulder to shoulder, like they were protecting something precious. That's when Ethan saw it. Something that made him question everything he thought he knew about nature. At the center of the circle, the grass emitted an unearthly green glow. It wasn't just a soft shimmer, but a vivid, pulsing light that appeared to rise from deep within the earth. The glow shifted like liquid, coursing through the blades of grass. Right in the center of this glowing circle was an object about the size of a tennis ball, but it wasn't like anything Ethan had ever seen before. The object appeared to be some kind of rock, but it was covered in intricate patterns that moved and shifted, glowing with the same strange green light as the grass. As Ethan watched through his drone's camera, he noticed something else. The bison weren't just standing still. They were swaying slightly, all in perfect unison, like they were listening to some inaudible music. In the cool morning air, their breaths formed clouds of steam, rising in perfect rhythm with each other and matching the pulsing glow of the strange rock. No one would have believed this scene if the drone hadn't captured it. 20 minutes later, Ethan heard the crunch of tires on gravel and turned to see Mila's Forest Service truck pulling up, dust billowing behind it. He quickly descended the narrow path to meet her, his tablet still streaming the live drone footage clutched tightly in his hands. He called out to her, his voice carrying across the morning air. Mila jumped out of the truck with Tim right behind her. "Let me see what you've found," Mila said, extending her hand for the tablet. Her hands remained steady, but the strain in her shoulders betrayed the tension as she carefully examined the footage. Tim crowded in beside her, his breath catching as the strange scene came into view. "Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much." "I've never—" Mila started, then stopped, squinting at the screen. "Ethan, how long have they been like this?" "At least 30 minutes now," Ethan replied, pointing to the timestamp in the corner. "And look at this." He stepped closer, zooming in on the mysterious object. The patterns keep changing. It's like they're evolving somehow. Mila's eyes widened as she watched the shifting symbols on the rock's surface. She'd dealt with everything from lost hikers to angry bears, but this was completely different. She pulled out her phone and quickly called Dr. James Wilson, a leading scientist who specialized in unusual natural phenomena. They had collaborated in the past, researching the unique behaviors of Crystal Lake's wildlife, but nothing had equipped them for what they were now facing. "You're going to want to see this," she said to him, "and make sure to bring every piece of scientific equipment you have." Tim, despite his usual bravado, stood speechless at the sight. His hands shook as he set up the seismic monitoring equipment. The readings matched the strange patterns they'd detected all week, but now they were off the charts. As they waited for Dr. Wilson to arrive, an unexpected crisis emerged. A group of tourists, having spotted the unusual gathering of bison from the main road, had decided to investigate. Mila spotted them making their way across the meadow, phones raised to capture photos, completely unaware of the potential dangers of approaching a herd of 2,000-pound wild animals. "Tim, handle the tourists," Mila ordered, her voice steady despite the extraordinary situation. "Set up a perimeter. Nobody gets close until we know what we're dealing with." The young ranger nodded, relieved to have a clear task to concentrate on. Tim jogged toward the group of arriving tourists. They were already raising their phones, pointing and whispering about the unusual bison formation. Tim called out to them, making sure to keep his voice friendly but authoritative. He raised both hands in a gentle stop gesture. "I'm Ranger Tim. I'm going to need everyone to hold up right here." A man with a camera stepped forward, his excitement evident as he gestured toward the bison. He asked if he could take a few more steps to get a closer view. "Sir, I completely understand your excitement," Tim said. "But did you know that a single adult bison can run faster than a horse? Some of them are over 2,000 pounds, so you really don't want to get too close. And right now, we've got an entire herd in an unusual state. Your safety is my top priority." Tim assured the group that he could guide them to a better viewing spot with a clearer angle. As he led them to a natural rise about 50 yards back, Tim shared stories about the herd's history and intelligence, keeping the tourists engaged while simultaneously moving them to safety. He used his truck to block off an impromptu parking area and set up some quick boundary markers with orange safety flags from his emergency kit. "All right, everyone," he said, assisting an elderly couple with their folding chairs. "You've got front row seats to something truly extraordinary. Just make sure to keep your voices low and stay behind these markers." A few minutes later, a dusty SUV pulled up beside Mila's Forest Service truck, and out stepped Dr. James Wilson, his silver hair disheveled from the hasty drive. Mila hurried over with Ethan's tablet and quickly briefed him on the morning's events, while Ethan's drone continued to stream live footage of the extraordinary scene. "The herd's been in this formation for almost an hour now, and look at this object they're surrounding," Mila said. Dr. Wilson's eyes widened as he watched the footage, his hands unconsciously tightening on the tablet's edges. The shifting patterns on the mysterious rock's surface were mesmerizing. "Extraordinary," he murmured. "We need to get closer." "James, you can't be serious," Mila protested, but the determination in his eyes told her he'd already made up his mind. "These are bison we're talking about, 2,000 pounds each, and they're clearly in an agitated state. Which is precisely why we need to seize this opportunity," Dr. Wilson countered, already gathering his most essential instruments. Whatever's happening here could be unprecedented in wildlife behavior studies. Mila knew that look. She'd seen it enough times over their years of collaboration. Sighing, she keyed her radio. "All available units to the East Meadow. We need backup for a close approach to the herd." She faced the small group assembled near her truck. "Let's handle this the right way. We'll establish a safety perimeter using the vehicles." Within minutes, 3 more Forest Service trucks arrived, their lights flashing silently. Rangers emerged with tranquilizer guns, just in case, and began positioning the vehicles in a protective formation. What happened next was even more incredible. As Dr. Wilson and the park rangers approached the circle of bison with Forest Service trucks and equipment, the massive animals did something unprecedented. They actually moved aside to let them through. It was as if they recognized their intent, understanding that they meant no harm. Dr. Wilson emerged from the lead truck, his arms full of scientific equipment. The moment he stepped onto the grass within the circle, his instruments erupted into a cacophony of beeps. The readings were off the charts, showing energy levels that shouldn't have been possible. "This is extraordinary," he breathed, watching as his most sophisticated equipment tried to quantify what they were measuring. As Dr. Wilson conducted his analysis, the mystery began to unravel. Through careful scientific observation, the glowing rock turned out to be a rare geological formation, a uranium-containing mineral deposit pushed to the surface by recent seismic activity under Crystal Lake. The unusual green glow was caused by natural uranium fluorescence, a documented phenomenon where uranium-bearing minerals emit visible light when exposed to UV radiation. The shifting patterns that seemed to glide across the surface were, in reality, an optical illusion caused by morning dew refracting sunlight through the mineral's crystalline structure. This very radioactive deposit was the source of the anomalous readings Mila had observed on her instruments. The bison's bizarre behavior was due to their acute sensitivity to atmospheric ionization, a documented phenomenon in large mammals. The exposed uranium minerals had created a localized increase in air ionization, which the herd could detect. Their circular formation and apparent swaying were instinctive responses to these environmental changes, similar to how animals behave before earthquakes or major storms. The mineral deposit contained several rare uranium minerals, including automite and torbernite, which fluoresce naturally under UV light. The site was promptly designated as a restricted research zone, with Mila and Tim meticulously overseeing access to address both radiation safety concerns and scientific curiosity. As protective barriers were set up around the mineral deposit, the bison slowly returned to their usual grazing routines, although they continued to steer clear of that particular meadow. For Ethan, the experience brought unexpected meaning to his morning flights. What began as a way to cope with loss led to an important scientific discovery, an improved understanding of wildlife behavior in response to environmental changes. The discovery joined other documented cases of animal responses to environmental changes, such as birds adjusting their migration patterns near radiation sources or cattle aligning with magnetic fields. Another example of how natural phenomena can appear mysterious until carefully studied and understood through scientific methods. Did you enjoy this story? Have you ever experienced unusual or peculiar behavior from your dogs or cats? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Solving a mystery is always a satisfying experience. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.